Hi everyone, just before we get into this episode of Type 1 on 1, I just wanted to say, first of all, thank you so much for pressing play. I really hope you enjoy this episode. If you do, don't forget to hit subscribe and you'll be notified when new episodes come about. You can find us across podcast land on Spotify, iTunes, all those good places as well. Secondly, anything you hear on this podcast should not be taken as medical advice. I am, of course, not a professional, and you do need to seek advice from your healthcare team before making any changes to your diabetes management. And lastly, if you want to say hello, I do have an Instagram page specifically for the Type 1 on 1 podcast. You can find it at Studio Type 1 on 1. That's at Studio Type 1, the number, on 1, the number. And you can also come and say hello and follow me on my personal page, which is at Miss Jen Grieves. And all of that will be noted in the episode description. Hi everyone, and welcome to Type 1 on 1, a podcast that delves into the obscure, complex and challenging world of life with type 1 diabetes. I'm Jen Grieves, and each week, with the help of some brilliant guests, I'll be showing that there is no normal when it comes to handling this whopper of a chronic condition, because we're all pretty much figuring out the messiness of day-to-day life with diabetes as we go. And most of all, even though it doesn't always feel like it, we are absolutely not alone. Type 1 diabetes was once considered a childhood condition, certainly in relation to the age of diagnosis. But the average age of diagnosis is, in fact, increasing, and studies show that more than a third of people are now being diagnosed after the age of 30. And that was the case with today's guest, Shonagh Price, who was diagnosed at the age of 50 just a few years ago. Welcome to Type 1 on 1, Shonagh. Hello.
Hello. Lovely to see you.
Hi. You too. Thank you so much for joining me today. How's lovely Edinburgh this morning?
It's a little bit overcast, but lovely. Scottish weather.
The classic. Yeah. And we've just been having a chat, we jumped on and you were saying, oh, I had these alarms overnight and my sensor's going to go off because it's warming up. And I said, oh, my sensor's warming up as well. So already we've kind of demonstrated it's not just a normal Friday morning, is it? Well, it is, I guess, for people with type 1 diabetes.
Yeah.
So it's all happening.
Totally. The tech is amazing, but now and again you're still up at 3 a.m. to the bleep 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 and the finger picking to check what the right on cue.
There you go.
I'm
right on cue.
There we go. Just attend to that.
Sensor warm-up's complete. Yes.
Just
how
telling
you doing?
me. Yeah. Thank you, sensor.
There we go. Thank you, sensor. We love it. Yeah. It just demonstrates it, doesn't it? What we're kind of handling alongside everything else that's going on in our lives. So yeah, here we are, very on brand this morning for a type 1 diabetes podcast.
Totally. Yeah.
I love it. And I seem to be making a habit of striking up conversations with people on Instagram and then convincing them to come on to the podcast, which is exactly what happened here. So thank you so much. I'm very, very grateful that you agreed to come on. And I think this topic of adult diagnosis, well, it's becoming more relevant, as I said. It's really important to talk about, not only from a kind of awareness perspective that this can happen at any age, but also for so many other reasons. So thank you very much for joining me today.
You're very welcome. It was a surprise to me as well, being diagnosed at 50. I just thought that it just can't be. How does that happen? In my head as well, it was a childhood condition. You get it in childhood.
Yeah, so talk to me a little bit then about what happened, like how you started to experience symptoms, what life looked like at the time.
Yeah, well, it was during lockdown. So life at the time was probably similar to everybody. Everything had stopped. It was just around that time where things had just started to open up. It was at 2020, getting near Christmas. And I think it was maybe the same in Scotland as in England, that we were told at that Christmas we could move about. And my parents live up in Aberfeldy up north, and said, "Oh, brilliant! I'll be able to go up and see mum and dad. Haven't seen them for ages. We'll be able to have Christmas together." And then I think it was around the 23rd, we suddenly got locked down again and couldn't move about. So I was feeling quite low with lockdown. I was exhausted. I was having like I never go to bed in the afternoon, and I was starting to go to bed in the afternoon thinking, "Oh, this isn't right." And I was putting it down to feeling a bit depressed about the whole lockdown, not getting home for Christmas, all of that. And then Iain, my partner, and I were watching a program with subtitles, and it was a weekly instalment. And I was reading them fine, but as the weeks went on, I was getting closer and closer to the television each time. And I realised my eyesight was off. Just, and I thought, that's strange, because it wasn't reading, at night, that aging thing of, it was the long distance, I just couldn't see anymore. And I thought that was, because I'd had my 50th birthday was in the December as well. And I thought, I've turned 50 and all this is coming at me. I'm feeling a bit depressed, my eyesight's going. Oh, great, thank you, 50. Um, so I think in the January, I went to the optician, got my eyes tested, bought a pair of £200 varifocal glasses. I was losing weight, which was a bit odd and not trying. But then I put that down to doing more exercise during lockdown. I love running. I used to be that spin class 3 times a week, obviously not during lockdown, but I was that person. I was always at the gym, yoga, spinning, running, um, all of that. And so I just knew in my body something wasn't right. I was doing an online yoga class because it was all online at that time, and I was in the warrior pose, you're lunging, and my leg was starting to shake. Really weird. I've done hundreds of yoga classes. Why is my leg really weak? It was just shaking. Um, so I started to put it down to perimenopause. I thought, here I am, 50, feeling exhausted, run down, something's just not right. Spoke to a friend who'd already started to go through the menopause and told her, and she said, yeah, it could be menopause. And strangely enough, I spoke to another friend who's a few years older than me, and I said, oh, what were your symptoms? Because I think I'm hitting it. And she said, well, what are yours? And I told her, and her son is type 1 diabetic. And she said, you might be diabetic. I think you should go and get a blood test done. And I went, oh, don't be silly. There's no way I'm going to be type 1 diabetic. Like, don't be silly. She went, I think you should go and get checked. I think it was the losing weight and the tiredness. And so, obviously, during lockdown, it wasn't easy to get an appointment with a GP. So, I was just feeling so awful and I'd been a bit tearful. And I phoned the GP. And luckily, they phoned back. Well, I got the receptionist, and luckily, a doctor did phone me back. I told him the symptoms, and I think I got really lucky that I got a good doctor, because he said, I think you should come in, which was unusual again at that time as well. So went round to see him. We had a chat. He said, what do you think it is? I said, I think I'm menopausal. So we had a little chat about that. And then he said, I think I'm just going to do a finger prick test. And he did it. And of course, it was sky high. I'd done a 10K run that morning on the beach at Portobello here in Edinburgh. And he said, you need to go to the hospital. I think he did my ketones as well, which I had no idea what they even were at that point. And he said, you need to go to hospital. And I was like, what? And he said, you need to go to hospital. So by that afternoon, I was at the Western General in Edinburgh. They did another ketone test, and I could see the screen, and it said 7, and I thought, that doesn't sound too much. That's quite a low number. Now I realise 7 is really high. but at the time I just didn't register. I thought that looks reasonable. So they admitted me. Suddenly I was in a ward. I was hooked up to cannulas and drips and all sorts during lockdown. So Iain couldn't come in and see me. I was on my own. I went into a ward, the only woman in the ward. It was all men. I would say over the age of 80, nearly all of them. There was a lot of noise going on. I was in my bed, there was the curtain pulled around me, and you know when you're hooked up to cannulas and they start to bleep, and I think I'd only just been hooked up, so they were bleep bleep bleeping away. The man in the bed next to me was going, "Oh, will you shut the?" So
Oh no.
it was just, I was just going, "What is going on?" And
Very
so
surreal, very scary, yeah.
yeah, Iain couldn't come in and see me. I was getting obviously the finger prick and the blood test done every hour, all through the night. A man fully suited up had to come in and about, I don't know, it was about 1 in the morning, giving me a COVID test. Um, in the morning, all the gentlemen in the ward were getting their bed bath done. The nurse was coming round with it, and the little cardboard pots for them to relieve themselves in. And I was just going, what, what, what is going on? And uh, weirdly
Had they
enough,
said this is type 1 diabetes at that point?
yes, they
Did
had.
you know that you had been diagnosed?
Yes, they
Right.
said it just before I got.
Did you know anything about it? Did you know, you know, did you have any awareness of what that meant then for you
A,
while all of this completely surreal and quite dramatic stuff was happening in your very present moment?
yeah, a little bit because, as I said, a good friend of mine, her son is type 1 diabetic. And I remember her when he got diagnosed as a child, about 12 years old. And I remember having conversations with her at the time and really sympathizing. But now I can obviously understand so much more. And I remember her saying things like she would set an alarm for every hour, 2 hours through the night and go through and do finger prick checks on him to check that he was okay. Because that was before he had a sensor or anything like that. And she was up. She said she didn't sleep for a couple of years because she was constantly checking him through the night and setting alarms. And now I understand why. And it must be so difficult for parents trying to manage it for a child. And I have so much more appreciation for what she went through. So I knew little bits about what it meant, um, but just in shock. And then weirdly enough, didn't help. A friend randomly, because it was around that Christmas, New Year time, had just texted me, hadn't heard from him for a while. He said, "Oh, just checking in, seeing how you are. You live down in London." And I said, "You'll not believe it. I am sitting on a hospital bed. I've just been diagnosed with type 1 diabetes." And he said, "Oh, yeah, a good friend of mine died of undiagnosed diabetes." I was just like, "Oh my God."
You're staring the real sharp end of like healthcare in the face. To receive messages like that is not helpful, especially if you're sat there on your own as well. It's Christmas, like you poor thing. I'm just so sorry. This is such a terrifying introduction, and I think as well, like this is with quite a efficient diagnosis, shall we say, in the sense of that GP doctor, that doctor doing that finger prick test, which is all it takes. But we
Yeah,
know the stats are there that around 40% of adult diagnoses are first misdiagnosed
yeah,
as type 2 because of the age. And I think just from a medicine standpoint, in terms of the medicine that a person with type 1 needs versus someone with type 2, that is so terrifying. So for you to have quite a quote unquote efficient experience and still go through all this, I think it really speaks to like what a lot of people are going through as an entry point to this condition, to then start to get your head around kind of the longevity of it, the day-to-dayness of it, like you say, the checking your blood every hour. Like it's a lot to be faced with. How long were you in hospital for before you were discharged?
Only the one night. I remember a nurse coming around and doing bloods again the next morning. And I said, when will I get out? When will I get out? Because this ward was just horrendous. And she said, I think we'll be in another night at least. And I remember crying, just bursting into tears and saying, please let me out, please let me out. And I think, again, because it was COVID, they probably just pushed it forward a wee bit to get me out of there. And I was slightly hysterical about staying in as well. So they did let me out. I had to go, obviously, and see the nurses. I remember being in the room with the nurses and them giving me the instructions, basically, of what you're dealing with. I had to inject myself. I got, shown how to just screw the needles onto the end of the pen, how to work a glucose monitor, lots of leaflets, insulin. It was so overwhelming. And then sent home with a plastic bag full of things to keep you alive.
Oh my gosh, you poor thing. And did you have many points of contact with the care team after you were at home?
Yes, they were
to help you through this.
Yes, yeah. I think I was back the next morning actually, just to see how the night had gone and to get more instructions about even starting to do the carb counting talk. I remember there was a nutritionist there as well, a dietitian, to talk through the carb counting thing. So yeah, they did keep in quite close contact. Nice. And I know how lucky I was with that GP, as you said, that he recognised what it was. And I remember him saying when he did the finger prick test, he said, you're diabetic, and by the looks of you, I would say you're type 1. I remember him almost diagnosing it there and then. It would be type 1.
Yeah, but still such a terrifying experience and such a lot to adjust to. How did you get through? And I'm so sorry for making you emotional and relive it all. I'm so sorry. How did you move through those first days and weeks with your lovely partner Iain as well? Like, how did you start to approach it? I guess, was it just dose by dose and
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, where did you go from there?
Probably not very well. The first day I got back, I remember with the little glucose monitor. And as I say, my friend whose son is type 1, I remember kind of panicking and shaking and thinking, what if I'm having a hypo? Because I was terrified of this hypo that I'd been told about that you would definitely be having, and a lot of them. And I was going, what will it feel like? I don't want it. I don't want it. Anyway, I remember FaceTiming my friend Louise, and her son was there. And I had my little glucose monitor, but I had the strip in the wrong way round. But because she could see that and her son could see it, she went, no, turn it the other way, turn it the other way. It was all those little things that you just don't know. And I remember the next morning, I got through the night okay and doing finger prick test and seeing what the numbers were and sitting at the table, the kitchen table, with all this stuff and leaflets and insulin and the needles everywhere and just looking at all going, this is my life now. This is it.
And there's a really big piece here as well, I think, which if you're okay to touch on, that at 50, I'm 37 and I sort of have a sense of who I am and what my life looks like. And yes, I've always brought type 1 along with me for the ride because I was diagnosed in childhood. But as a 50-year-old, things are set in a certain way, aren't they? And then, as you say, this thing comes in and I think it's so physical in its presence because there is so much stuff. And then you've got all this information that's in another language and you're kind of set off on this path on your own, like, one night in hospital and off you go with all this stuff. By the way, this is forever. PS, that hypo's coming and this medicine's really dangerous, but it's also keeping you alive. There's just so much to contend with there. What was that impact like? I mean, that sounds like a ridiculous question, but just from the perspective of having your life set in a certain way and going to spin class 3 times a week and, you know, being very in the groove of the rhythm of your life. If you could speak to that just a little bit.
Yeah, it's been massive, and I think I'm still coming to terms with it in a lot of ways. As I, we got kind of in touch because I was asking about running, because I used to be a runner, and it's what I did to clear my head as well. I have a bit of a problem. Oh, I'll just put my trainers on and go for a run on the beach and sort that problem out. And now it comes with so much baggage. Have I got my glucose with me? What are my numbers before I go out? 5 minutes in, check your numbers, check your numbers. What are you going low? What are you going low? What are you going too high? It just sits there, this little voice. So I never feel that just freedom anymore. That just go into that little flow zone where you're just, it's almost like a meditation. It just feels like that is just gone. And I don't know if that ever comes back because you'll always have that voice going, have you checked? Have you checked? Check again. What are you going to check? You just, I don't think, well, how could I have but appreciated the freedom of life before? Oh, I'll just go out for a meal and I'll drink that extra glass of wine. Now it's, do you think you should have that glass of wine? What about your numbers tomorrow? You might go low. Oh, you want that extra, portion you want seconds. What's that going to do to your numbers? Can't you be bothered actually taking another bolus for that? That'll make things really. There's just this voice sits there all the time. Oh, you want to run for that train, do you? Oh, well, let's see what that does. That freedom just has gone. There's this little voice sits on your back the whole time, and it dictates whether you're going to have a good day or not. It decides.
Gosh, it's so powerful. Like I've got real chills because I just know everyone listening is like I'm sat here with full chills because that is it. That's the bit that nobody sees, that can't be taken away. And yes, medical devices help, and we'll definitely get onto that.
Yeah.
But to have that come at you so suddenly, so clearly, like in such stark contrast, I mean, I just can't imagine. And I'm wondering as well, with the age of your diagnosis, because this increase in the age of diagnosis has come about quite recently, and I think the literature is still catching up. There's a lot around for how you manage a type 1 diabetes diagnosis for a child, for instance.
Yeah.
I'm wondering whether you found it easy to find out how to navigate this as an adult, as a person who is 50, or 40 or 30 or whatever. But was it easy to find information to get to grips and help this a bit?
Yeah, well, I think because it was lockdown as well, I had time just to sit and look at stuff. However, I think I probably did it too much in a way because I just wanted information. And I am very like that. I want to take control and go, what can I do to manage this? And normally, if you got a condition or whatever, you go, okay, I need to eat this and do this kind of exercise or take these and fix it. And I knew there was no fixing it. It wasn't going away. But I looked on Facebook and joined some of the diabetic Facebook groups. I read a lot online. I did buy Dr. Bernstein's book as well, The Diabetes Solution, and I read that. I think I went too far into the Facebook group. There is brilliant information on there, but there's a lot of horror stories as well. And I was Googling things like life expectancy of a diabetic. I was doing that. I was going there. I was picking the wounds. And I remember Iain coming in one day and I was just in tears at the table.
Oh, my love, let's have a breathe. We'll have a minute.
And I remember him saying, you need to step away from those step away from the internet for a bit, just step away. And he was right. I'd gone too far down a rabbit hole.
Yeah, but it's so understandable in the sense of this thing that you've never heard of is now such a huge part of your life and your existence. It makes so much sense. And I think there's sort of a rocking of the boat, isn't there? And then that boat sort of tipping back and almost the impact of that second rock being greater. And, you know, finding some sort of balance is very
Yeah.
hard to do. When you speak of that weight on your back and that noise in the back of your head as you go through your day, do you feel like now, a few years in, that has quietened a little bit as you've come to understand the condition a
Mhm.
little bit more? Is it something you're still working with?
I think it's something I'm still working with. As I say, as we got chatting, I still have that, I can't get that feeling of the running again. And when you need it the most for your mental health, it's the things that are taken away from you. That's the thing I would do to help me with this condition if it didn't affect blood glucose, I think I think it's a real grief that you have. I remember walking up just a local street in Edinburgh up Easter Road, and there's a new shop, a little independent shop that opened up, and it's a running shop. And I walked past it and went, oh, that looks really interesting. I know old me would have gone in and gone, oh, a new pair of running leggings or something. And I just walked past. I could feel these big tears coming down my cheeks. And that was only a few weeks ago. Is that real grief?
I think it's so healthy and important that you've acknowledged that this is grief, because it is. And I'm not a therapist, so I don't want to sit here and
I feel like
pertain
I'm
to be
having a
anything like
therapy
that.
session. Do I have
But
to
with
pay
the
you at the
running
end of
and you know, no, I should be paying you. I'm so sorry for making you relive this as well and articulate it.
No,
But
I'm
I
having full
like, this
therapy.
is why I think this, yeah, I do think this is so important. And I know you're doing a service to so many people. And it's something I've spoken about to my friends in their 30s who've been diagnosed, that kind of stripping of identity, as you say, and your coping mechanisms. This is a huge one, the running. And, you know, to reassure you again, not a therapist, not a medical professional. I know we've spoken about it a little bit. You said, oh, I came in the other day and I was 11.8 and rising. And I was like, that's actually amazing, so you are doing it regardless. And I think that's incredible as well, that it's not, you've not gone, well, I'm never doing that again. You are testing, you are trying, you are pushing, you are experimenting. And I really hope for you. And it's easy for me to sit here and say it, but I'm so sure that day will come where you have that good run and you feel even more amazing for it, because that is something that I always take through life. I think because we're so aware of what it's like to not feel well, and it's actually quite a normal for us to be in a state of unwell, low level consistently on a day, and sometimes on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
I think when things do fall into place and it does feel sweeter, it's like euphoria. Just the stillness of not having an alarm, of having a day where I don't think about it, more than I'm thinking about the thing that I'm actually trying to do.
Yeah.
And I hope that is of some comfort. I don't know if it's of any use. Yeah, with the running particularly, what have you been trying? Just kind of little distances and
Yeah, little distances, because I'm trying to use
yeah,
activity mode, but I think that makes me go too high. So somebody suggested
yes,
changing your target. So I think activity makes you go to 8.2, meant to keep you at, but I always end up going higher for some reason. That beginning of the run where
yeah,
you get that glucose dump into your muscles, and it just so somebody suggested
yeah,
changing your target for an hour to 7.2. So it is a bit higher, but not as high as activity mode. So I'm kind of experimenting with that at the moment, if that makes sense. That's just changing the target range.
yeah. Yeah, it does. So this is specifically in relation to Omnipod 5, which you have
Yeah,
gone on. So we'll come into the
yeah,
technology.
yeah.
But yeah, I, as someone who is also on Omnipod 5, activity mode is not something I set. And I think they advise children, especially, who are going off to run around, to set the activity mode off like an hour before you even begin said activity. But for me, I have to be well into my run, like you say, to get that initial glycogen dump or whatever it is. Again, not a scientist. I don't know the terms. I don't know the science. But yeah, I often spike if I run first thing in the morning at
Yeah.
first before I then start to drop quite quickly. So yeah, it's those tweaks and just having to work this out in relation to your specific body and your specific needs. Sometimes on that specific day, if not that particular time of day. So yeah, credit to you for going for it and persevering. But
Yeah.
it's
But
just such a lot. My heart really goes out to you. And yeah, thank you for sharing as well. Like, I know this isn't easy.
yeah, and I must say, Jen, as well, that during that first stages of being diagnosed, where I was just looking for information, I obviously looked for podcasts and I listened to loads of podcasts, and there's some good ones, great ones out there, but yours was my one that I just went to every single week. And I think it's because, and you were so inspiring. You were traveling, you were working abroad, you were climbing, because I love climbing hills as well, and you were climbing, hiking, and your chat with Amy, so because she'd just been, I think she was 3 years in as well. She'd been quite recently diagnosed
Yeah, yeah,
as older as well as an adult. So that was really good, and you were just living your life and running and talking about. I just thought, right, this is doable. She does it. Surely I can do it as well. This is doable. And you really gave me that inspiration. Gonna go. People live with this and still do stuff and
yeah,
travel
they
and
do.
hike and
And
all of it.
yeah, and you are doing it. You are living. Yes, and all of that is coming. And Amy, that's something that she loved before and didn't do for a long time. And now she's very much back in that spin room. So,
Yeah, I want to know how she's
like
doing
to
it because I
reassure you
haven't.
again. And
Yeah, yeah. I don't. Yeah, I need some
yeah,
coaching on
okay.
how to do a spin class.
I should bring her on, and you guys can have a chat.
Can we?
Yeah. But yeah, 100%. Extend the therapy sessions. Maybe we should do just a group Zoom call. I'd love that. Oh, there's an idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm. Thank you so much. That means the world. Honestly, that's why these conversations I think are so important, because if it's that one person that really needs to hear it at that time, that's all. That's that's all that matters, I think. And you're now extending that to people who are listening to this today. So yeah, again, just really appreciative. And it's important that we speak about these things, because this isn't the stuff you get to chat about in your medical appointments, is it? And um yeah, I just yeah, it's because there aren't solutions, because it's so unique to everyone's body. I'm also so aware that me running around and traveling and flying about and running my 10Ks, like sometimes that's not helpful for people to see. So I think this dose of realness as well is always really important. And that brings me back to you in the sense of, I'm wondering what perfection markers or what your perceived idea of achieving with type 1 diabetes is, because I think, because maybe it's just from living with it since I can really remember, I sort of never expect anything to go right. So when it does, I'm like, woohoo! And just always tweaking, playing, fiddling, but with no expectation that it's going to be quote unquote perfect, and also no pressure on myself for it to be so. Like, I'm still out there doing it, and for me that is the achievement, that is the success, is that I've gone and tried and done it anyway. Do you know what I mean? I'm wondering where you're sitting with that, and how that kind of connects with you at the moment in terms of what you're perceiving versus what you could do pre-diagnosis, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
I think just being diagnosed later in life as well, you know what it used to be like. You know, uh, just running for a 10K or a half marathon. You wouldn't necessarily be doing that as a child if you've been diagnosed. So there's that real sense of, and I see myself as old me and new me. And it's
As
very,
sorry.
as old me and the new me. It's like since
Oh
diabetes has,
yeah, yeah.
that person is gone. I remember even that Christmas, just before I was diagnosed, I was given new hiking boots, a paddle board, a wetsuit, and looking at it, all this new stuff in the cupboard, going, "Oh, that's old me." And you know, yes, I would love to, and I will get those hiking boots on, and I will get the paddle board out. Those are my little goals. So I just want to do all those things, and I know it's possible. I have there's there's you. I've listened to people who cycle hundreds of miles as a type 1 diabetic. And I just want to do a 10K on Portobello Beach now. That would be amazing. And people do these incredible things with type 1 diabetics, and so it is it's it's doable. I just need to work out how to do it.
This episode of Type 1 is sponsored by Dexcom. I've been using the Dexcom continuous glucose monitor for years, and it's hard for me to express just how much of a difference it's made to my life as someone living with type 1 diabetes. Their CGM sensors give me the confidence to make informed treatment decisions in the moment, which is great for me as I'm often running around, and with just a quick glance I can see exactly where my glucose level is, where it's been, and where it's headed. So please take a look at Dexcom.com. They have a choice of systems, so you can find the right one for your lifestyle.
And the other thing, which I have to get back to as well, is I said to you that I'm an actor. And since being diagnosed, I said to my agent, I don't know how to do theatre. I can't imagine being on a stage and feeling a hypo coming on. And because, as you know, you can't stop it. You have to go and treat it immediately. You can maybe get through a high and just this, like, as I say, old me. Oh, off to do panto, jump about, be on stage, doing whatever for an hour. And so that's old me as well. And I haven't done that. But, I was listening to, I think it was James Norton, who's type 1 diabetic, on Graham Norton. And he was doing a one-man show. I was like, how does he do it? But he was explaining how he had the little lift juices hidden around the set, and he would just, if he felt a bit low, he would just take. And again, that I don't intend to do a one-woman show at any point in my life, but just to be able to do something again and just say that I'm available and it's doable, but I still can't get my head around that. Just not feeling scared.
Yeah.
What my blood group is doing, what's going on.
Yeah, totally. And again, I think all of this is valid. It's rational thought that you're experiencing, right? Because there is a reason why you feel like this, and it's very clear. So yeah, I'm just with you 100%. Is there anything that you've done recently or in the years since you've been diagnosed that when you were in those first few weeks of diagnosis, you maybe thought you wouldn't ever do again, but you have since been able to do?
Yeah, I mean, and this seems crazy having just said what I said, but not long after I was diagnosed, I did a casting for the series Shetland, the kind of crime drama. It's set in Shetland, an island, and it was an online casting. And it was only about a month into my diagnosis, and I was thinking, oh, I don't want to get this. Of course, when you think you don't want to get something, you have some sort of aura about you. And of course, I got it. And I nearly turned it down, and I thought, it's too soon. I have to travel, I have to fly to Shetland. I'll be on my own in a hotel room without Iain. And at the time, I was still very much in this, I could die in my sleep. I was in that space in my head. He won't be there. What was going to happen? However, I did it. And I went to Shetland, and everybody was just so understanding. I remember the wardrobe women putting jelly babies in a little bag and putting it in my costume, just in case. And they were holding on to my, phone, because I think I had the sensor by then, and so they were like holding on to my phone. And because it was filming, I knew I could stop at any point and say, I don't feel great. I need to go in. Unlike theatre, which is like once you're on the train, you can't get off it. I could stop at any point and say, I need, and I didn't need, I don't think I actually did it at any point, but that really helped me in those first few months. I was so glad I did it because it just gave me that confidence to not just hide in my cave almost, because I'd just gone into a cave, and it really pushed me out and said, right, that's doable.
Yeah, that's incredibly powerful. Yeah, good for you as well, because there's understandably a lot of people that wouldn't have done it. But I think to hang on to some sense of what you know to be true of you and your life pre-diagnosis, like that's incredibly powerful. And to do it with type 1 diabetes on top and kind of defy that expectation of things going wrong, that's amazing. And I think for me, step by step, you're just pushing what that activity is or that experience is more and more. You've done so much for 3 years of diagnosis. I had someone holding my hand for the first 10. So I always say this to Amy as well. Like, she teaches me more than I've ever taught her, because I think that adult head of like, this is so different from what it was before. She's just in this how do I do this? There's bits of that are resonating with what you're saying for sure. Yeah. Let's talk about Iain, your lovely partner, because I know you're getting married very soon as well, which is very exciting.
Yeah.
What's that been like in terms of the support that you've needed, and how you've communicated or made room for this ridiculous, relentless condition in your lives as
Oh,
a couple?
poor Ian. Because I think, and as an adult, I was diagnosed, and it's almost like he's had the diagnosis as well. He's had to learn it. He's just lived every step with me. And, as I say, seeing the tears at the table and the emotional roller coaster of it all. Um, and we have changed a bit of our eating patterns. And I've taken out, we both eat cauliflower rice now as well, instead of some of the big hitters. I just find I manage my glucose levels much easier. I know that's not for
Yeah.
everybody, but he's really,
Easier ride, isn't it? Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and it just works for me. And we all have
Like,
our own
choose your
things.
battles.
Exactly. And he does a lot of the cooking in the house, and he's really adapted to that and looked up recipes, and he's been amazing. Because it's not easy, and I remember saying to him, especially now that we're getting married, I said, "Are you sure?" Because big sniff there. I'm not the person you signed up for. I'm a broken. I describe myself as
Oh,
broken. But anyway, he said, "Don't be ridiculous." But yeah, I'm a wonky version now that he's got. And I know I shouldn't say that about myself, but I was doing some online counselling actually, and he was asking how you describe it, what your thoughts, and I described myself as broken at that point, and he said that's really interesting, and he said, have you heard of the Japanese pottery? It's where the pottery gets broken and they put it back gold, and he said, you think you're broken, but you're being put back together with gold, and you're stronger and more beautiful in the broken places. And I went, oh God, I'm going to hold on to that. And I actually went online and found a place that made them. And I've got this little bowl, a beautiful little bowl that's been broken and put back together with gold. So it's a reminder that I might have, I'm not who I was. My pancreas doesn't work the way it used to. But hopefully, maybe not quite there yet, but stronger and more beautiful in the broken places. We all are type 1. Sorry, I got
Yeah,
big.
that is so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And I'm not going to ask you any more questions because I think we should just really leave it there in the sense of like everyone has their stuff. And this is such a huge, stark, terrifying, confronting thing to deal with and to handle ongoing as you move through it. But it does make us so incredibly like all these things that we shouldn't necessarily be forced to experience against our will, but it makes us so resilient. It makes us so empathetic, powerful, compassionate, like cherishing of those moments that we have without alarms, like I said before,
Yeah,
and it binds us in this way that I've never experienced through any other friendship group or any other commonality with any other person ever. And I don't want to sit here and say it's positive because it's not, and clearly this is such an ongoing thing, but you are incredible. So I just want to
no,
say that to you. And for what you've gathered and how you've armed yourself with this and the sort of vulnerability that you've shown yourself, the awareness that you've shown yourself to face it in this way, I think is so beautiful and so powerful. So I would say you are completely shining in gold. And wonky is a term I use a lot. Wonky but wonderful. So
Right.
here's to
Yeah,
being
very
wonky
well.
and wonderful, yeah?
Yeah, wonky and wonderful. I'll use it. Yeah.
Oh,
But you do meet amazing people, don't you? And it's that thing when you meet another type 1, there's an immediate bond because you just go, you know. And, you know, I've had some great consultants, I've had some horrible consultants. And if they're looking at your graph or whatever and your Libre sensor and go, oh, this is too high, this needs to come down. And it's very much a you're high, you take insulin. You're low, you take some glucose. And we know it's so much more nuanced than that. There's so many variables. And I'm still learning them as well. You know, stress and not sleeping. I learn something new almost every week. Um, and it's just when you meet another type 1, just go, you know it, you know. I went on this amazing type 1 retreat down on Bath in the summer, and Iain came with me. He's really so supportive. He was there on all my training days for the Omnipod as well. So he just knows it all. Going for the first few days where he was saying, what's bolus? What is a bolus? Is it high flow or high power? Which one? All of that, he now just knows all the lingo. And we did this amazing type 1 retreat um, down in Bath. And all the speakers, well, everybody there was type 1, and all the speakers were type 1 as well. So when they were telling you that, oh, I do 100-mile cycle um, almost daily. I mean, this guy that did the exercise talk was incredible. Um, when they're saying you can do it, you believe them because they're talking from that lived experience. And it was a very, you know, it's a very low carb keto diet they were doing. But in that, which I do start to follow as well. And again, I say it's not for everybody, but it definitely helps me. And being, we call it being fat adapted, doing exercise, and it keeps you much more level. You're not on those big, massive highs and lows. You know, he says he doesn't have to stop at the filling station. His other friends on the cycle are all taking all the carbs in, and then you have another dip. When he's on very much a keto diet. He just keeps very steady. He says he doesn't get the lactic acid build up. He never gets the bonk, as he called it. And you just think, oh, if that's doable, then I can have maybe a piece of that. Um, and there was talks on mental health as well from type 1 diabetics, and it was amazing. It was really amazing. Okay.
yeah, that's amazing. I see like these points of you can only have so much trust in yourself because as a newly diagnosed person, you're aware of how new this all is and how foreign it all sounds and how unknown this body that you've lived in for all this time suddenly feels. So I think the tools that you're arming yourself with and the information you're taking in, once you've established what type of information is helpful versus, going down other rabbit holes that aren't so helpful, you kind of have to go through all that to pop out of the other side and be like, okay, what have I taken here that is helpful for me and actually shows up a mirror that maybe I can trust myself a bit more, maybe I can try more things. And I think that's a really good message to put out there, is like, there's a certain amount of it that you have to just try, but also there is information you can take or have that mirror held up to you. And, things like mental health and counselling, all these things you've touched upon, you're equipping yourself as best as you can to live life with this condition, to get to a point where you're living maybe not the same life as before, but a life that you recognise. Has the tech helped with your confidence as well?
Yes, the tech has been amazing. I had some other health issues last year, and it did fast track me because my glucose levels last year just went haywire, and it did fast track me through to getting. And I know I'm incredibly lucky to get it, and it helped incredibly with the sleep. I think that's one of the biggest things. Is put the runny nose down. It has helped so much with sleep. When you see those little red line bars when you wake up in the morning, it just kept me steady all through the night. It's not perfect, of course. You're still managing it. You're still counting your carbs. You still can't sit down and go, eat whatever I like. And you're still thinking, it'll still go high, or you still might have a high food. But it has helped. I think in one of your podcasts, I heard you say it's just taken the sharp edges off. And I totally agree with that. It does do that. I think I don't know. I don't know if all type ones are like this, but I feel I'm on high alert all the time. I don't even know I'm doing it. But the other day, I was walking down the street and I heard a beep, 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 and I thought, and I could feel the stress levels rising, going in a bag, looking for my phone and my controller, thinking, what's going on? What's going on? And I realised it was a car reversing, or a van reversing, making that beep beep noise. We're just hyper vigilant all the time and not really even knowing we are.
Yeah.
It just sits there.
100%. And sometimes not even why, it's just there.
Yeah. And you just realise, I'm just switched on all the time.
Which again, the cruel irony is that then we need the sleep even more, but this condition is interrupting that sleep. That is so precious.
One of those nights last night, the Omnipod does improve sleep so much, but the tech does fail sometimes. And last night I had one of those nights. My Dexcom went a bit awry. I was up 3 o'clock in the morning still doing the finger pick. So it's not this amazing, as some of the press says, this pancreas.
Yeah. I have a problem with that as well.
Yes, it really is. You're still managing it. You can't switch off. It still sits there. Although, as you say, it takes some of the edges off, and there is a lot. I wouldn't give it back.
100%. Yeah, for that hypervigilance piece that you speak about, that was the big thing for me. I think I just had this space where I felt like I should be thinking about something. I'm not a parent, but I imagine it's like when you drop your child off for their very first day at nursery and you suddenly are like, where are they? What, like you suddenly remember, and it's not the same at all, but that's the only thing I can kind of reach for that people without type 1 might understand, is not having to think took me a minute, not to having to think as much, sorry to correct myself. It really took me, I think I'm still figuring that out, where I'll be working away and suddenly realize I haven't thought about it for a number of hours, nor has an alarm gone off. So I'm like, has the thing imploded? I sort of to check. But
gone wrong.
I will take that. It is incredible. Yeah. And the note is just there, sitting in range, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'll carry on then. And that is magical to me. That is just incredible. Yeah. So I'm glad you're having a similar experience. And yeah,
where can people find you if they would like to reach out and say hello? And I'm sure you'll get many, many virtual hugs after this very generous conversation.
Oh, I hope I've not been too snottery. um,
No, you've been real, you've been you.
Thank you. I am on Instagram. I think it's under Nonnes, but if you put in Shonagh Price, you'll find me, and it's Shonagh with a G-A. Um, I'll be around there. I'm not massive on social media, but yeah, I will be around there.
Okay. And I will put that in the episode description if you're comfortable with that as
Yeah,
well.
that's fine. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I've said it a million times now, but thank you. Yeah, for you to open up in this way with something that is still very new. And again, I'd love to just reiterate that you're doing incredibly, and I don't think we give ourselves enough credit, no matter whether we've lived with it for a day or 100 years. I think we're very hard on ourselves because we have all this stuff screaming at us and telling us that we're, getting it quote unquote wrong, and we're not. We're just responding to living, and our body is responding to living, and we are responding to that as best we can, and that's all we can do. So yeah,
As I said,
thank
we
you.
we are all stronger and more beautiful, and our broken pancreas.
Gold and wonky and wonderful.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Type 1 Please remember that nothing you hear on this podcast should be taken as medical advice. I'm definitely not a healthcare professional. If you like what you hear, hit subscribe and do leave a little review on iTunes if you have time. It really helps to spread the word about type 1 diabetes. And thank you so much for listening.